Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the afternoon session of the Global Dialogue on AI Governance. We'd now like to invite to the stage Kathy Lee, who is head of the Center for AI Excellence for the World Economic Forum, who will be moderating our next session. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now we're good. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues and friends, welcome back to the plenary of the Global Dialogue on AI Governance. We hope that you had a productive morning of discussions and exchanges. Throughout today's breakout sessions and side events, you would have explored a wide range of issues related to artificial intelligence governance, sharing experiences, identifying challenges, and highlighting opportunities for collaboration and capacity building. These smaller format discussions have provided valuable opportunities for deeper engagement across stakeholder communities in order to help advance the practical and solution-oriented spirit of this dialogue. As we reconvene in plenary, we now have the opportunity to bring some of those perspectives back to our collective conversation and to continue strengthening understanding across different governance approaches, initiatives, and experiences. My name is Kathy Lee, head of the Center for AI Excellence at the World Economic Forum, and I'm really pleased to be moderating our next session titled AI Governance Initiatives and Approaches, Experiences, Lessons, and Complementarities. This session will bring together high-level representatives from governments, industry, civil society, academia, the technical community, and international organizations. The discussion will examine experiences and lessons learned from the AI governance initiatives around the world, explore areas of complementarity among existing efforts, and identify practical opportunities for cooperation and partnership. The session will also include a special announcement by the UN Interagency Working Group on AI, co-led by ITU and UNESCO, that aims to strengthen knowledge sharing and capacity building efforts across the international community, powered by UNDP. I'm pleased to now welcome our esteemed panelists for the session to the stage. First, please join me in welcoming Her Excellency Loreto Matterbosch, Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy, African Union Commission. Next, we have Her Excellency Dr. Hoda Baraka, National AI Lead, Egypt. Followed by Yasushi Masaki, Deputy Secretary General, OECD. Roberto Viola, Director General of Directorate General for Communication Networks, Content and Technology, DG Connect, European Commission. Sergio Mujica, Secretary General, International Organization for Standardization, known as ISO. And we have Ana Maria Ibanez, Vice President for Sectors and Knowledge, Inter-American Development Bank. Welcome. Lu Zhang, Founder and Managing Partner, Fusion Fund. Last but not least, Jason Pielmeyer, Executive Director, Global Network Initiative. Thanks everyone for joining. AI governance is evolving rapidly across national, regional, and international levels. Around the world, governments, international organizations, standards bodies, development institutions, industry, and civil society are all developing approaches that reflect their own mandates and priorities. This session is an opportunity to step back from individual initiatives and examine the broader landscape. What practical lessons have emerged? Where are we seeing convergence? And how can we strengthen complementarity across these efforts while respecting their different roles? At the World Economic Forum, the Center for AI Excellence serves as a global platform to accelerate the responsible use of artificial intelligence, data, digital technologies. Its work on AI governance is focused on advancing trustworthy technology and effective governance, promoting safety, transparency, and accountability through forward-looking frameworks and multi-stakeholder collaboration. Representing this impartial platform, I'm glad to moderate this discussion today. The AI governance landscape is becoming richer and more diverse, with initiatives emerging at national, regional, international, and multi-stakeholder levels. Before we explore specific approaches, I would like to ask each of you in 1 or 2 lines to share with everyone in the audience, what do you see as the most important contribution your initiative or the community you represent has made to the broader AI governance ecosystem? And what lesson from that experience could help strengthen cooperation across this broader landscape? If I can ask each of you to keep your intervention brief for this round, that would be great. I'm going to start with Her Excellency.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to provide the African Union perspective. I think having listened to a number of interventions from African leaders, both yesterday and today, what is becoming very clear is that Africa is increasingly advocating for what we may term a just AI transition. And that means that we are talking about, the central question really is about how Africa will emerge as an architect of AI systems itself, and not just remain a consumer of technologies that are developed elsewhere. And another important element is about how we ensure that as we focus on overall AI adoption, it's not just about AI for corporate Africa, it's also AI for developmental Africa. So there's a need for us to also look at how AI helps us to solve some of the concrete problems in the broader society and the economy and their impact, and not just really focus on the corporate adoption where there's already clear incentives and there's accelerated use, as it were. So that in itself is part of what also drives our governance architecture around solving for development, solving for inclusion, and ensuring that, again, Africa is not left behind and we become the co-creators of AI.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me for this important session. From Egypt's perspective, our most important contribution has been showing that AI governance can move from principles into practical implementation architecture, and that this architecture can serve as regional, not only at the national level. Through our national AI strategy, the National Council for AI, the Egyptian Center for Responsible AI, and the issuance of Egypt's National AI Governance Framework, National Guidelines for Trustworthy and Responsible AI, we translated actually responsible AI objectives into tools that policymakers, regulators, developers, procurers, and deployers can actually use. 3 elements can travel beyond our borders. First, of course, our AI governance frameworks, including our effort in policies such as the AI procurement guidelines. These policies have been aligned with definitely a number of multilateral organizations, with the ISO, with the OECD, with the UNESCO, with the Council of Europe. Second, our initiative AI Share in cooperation with the UNDP, so that whatever use case application that we have implemented can be shared by our neighbor countries, whether in the African continent or in the Arab region. Third, something that we have started actually to work on, which is the AI sandbox, where we see that this is a mechanism that can serve more countries all together. The lesson we draw is that cooperation strengthens fastest around shared resources and not shared statements. A common language model, like Karnak, for example, a reference governance framework, or a shared diagnostic tool create a reason for countries to stay in contact long after the meeting ends. Principles alone rarely do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Baraka. Mr. Masaki?
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased and honored to represent the OECD at this inaugural Global Dialogue on AI Governance. Indeed, we see the AI governance landscape growing. When the OECD began its work on AI 10 years ago, only a handful of countries had national AI policy initiatives. Today, the OECD AI Policy Observatory, the largest government-verified database of AI policy in the world, tracks more than 2,200 policies and initiatives from nearly 90 jurisdictions. The OECD contributes in three key ways. First, developing and implementing standards that help harmonize different elements of AI governance. The OECD AI principles are key examples serving as a common framework for governments to structure their national AI policies, strategies, and legislations. Second, strengthening international cooperations and multi-stakeholders dialogue. The Global Partnership on AI, GPA, currently brings together 46 countries informed by a multidisciplinary expert community. And third, building and maintaining the evidence base. This includes our data infrastructure and indicators on AI investment, research, and skills, as well as the AI incident monitor. As key takeaway from our work is that effective international cooperation does not require identical approaches. What matters most is a shared commitment to human-centric values that guide the development and deployment of AI. The OECD supports this by fostering a common understanding of key concepts, trends, challenges, and the opportunity grounded in robust evidence and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Roberto, please.
Thank you very much. The European Union has adopted a comprehensive strategy to governance of AI, which can be articulated in 4 different dimensions. The first dimension is the dimension of fostering the adoption of AI in society and the economy. AI can be a transformative force and can be a force of good, transforming healthcare delivery in a more efficient and effective, can transform industry, can deliver solutions for energy and preserve our planet. So as a force of good, we believe that every organization should kind of consider AI first. And this is the AI first principle we have introduced in the Union. Every public or private organization, when embarking a new transformation project, should consider AI as the option of choice. Maybe discard it, but consider it. The second dimension is the dimension of making sure that AI can be used by the scientific community, by the startup community, by public service, and we creating, for this purpose, public compute infrastructure. We are building, as we speak, 19 different AI, as we call them, AI factories, which are AI supercomputer center in 19 different locations in Europe. And we are launching, as we speak, also another round of much bigger AI compute centers, which we call AI gigafactories. The third element of our strategy is to have a comprehensive legislative framework in place in order to guarantee, on a basis of proportionality and necessity, a risk-based framework in terms of mitigating the potential risk of AI, and this is guaranteed through the EU AI Act, which is being put in place as, again, we speak. The fourth element and final element, but not final, but I mean essential element, is the international cooperation in multilateral and bilateral form. The Union really believes that AI governance can be effective only if it is a shared effort. Many thanks.
Thank you, Roberto. Now to Sergio.
Thank you, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. Well, being the Secretary General for ISO, I don't think anyone in this room would be surprised if I say that our main contribution is international standards. Why is that? First, because we bring to the table a universal and common language. That means that we can agree on definitions. What do we mean when we say AI? What do we mean when we say transparency? And when we say risks? Second, because we bring to the table agreed methodologies, which is really essential. For example, if you want to do impact assessment. And also we agree on technical requirements, which involve a promise. If I do things certain manner, I will get this expected outcome. So that's number one. Number two, we bring to the table due process. That means that this agreement I was referring to is not imposed, it's achieved by consensus. And even more, working in a transparent and multi-stakeholder inclusive manner, and also ensuring that developing countries, that this is really essential, ensuring that developing countries will have a voice in the process. And the third one is the capacity to be used everywhere. So once you have agreed on a standard, the same language, the same standard can be used in Zimbabwe, in Egypt, in Chile, in Germany, in the US, in China, literally everywhere. That means that we will be creating the basis for interoperability. And we do it in a way that creates trust. Thanks.
Thanks, Sergio. Over to Ana Maria.
Thank you, Kathy. For Latin America and the Caribbean, a region with great potential but not fully realized, AI can be a vehicle to close the productivity and development gap with advanced economies. The region is projected to grow 2.1% in 2026, very near to the 1.8% of the last decades, which is much lower than its potential. IDB estimates suggest that artificial intelligence in the LAC region could add 5% to our region output over the coming decade, just through the labor channel. Rapid adoption of AI can boost productivity if our countries set the foundations through three complementary conditions: institutions and governance, the human capital to put these tools to work across the economy, and the data and digital infrastructure on which everything rests. Every general purpose technology has taught the same lesson. The gains are never plug and play. Electricity did not increase productivity until factories were redesigned around it. And AI will be no different. Unless the state and the private sector transform how they actually work, adoption will simply automate our existing efficiencies. And that's where precisely the IDB group acts. We finance the condition that makes this technology useful and provide technical assistance to support countries in the institutional transformation that is required. We act across the public-private continuum through our three windows: IDB, IDB Invest, and IDB LAC. And this rests on two assets that take decades to build: granular technical knowledge of each economy and each country, and the programmatic capacity to act across many countries simultaneously and many sectors. Our whole-of-government approach, paired with our deep sectoral presence, allows us to act on the broader institutional transformation, while at the same time supporting solutions sector by sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna Maria. Lou, over to you.
Thank you, Cassie. So as an investor, been investing AI for more than 11 years, I think there are a lot of things we can and we wanted to contribute to the discussion conversation of AI governance. Number one is really bring the perspective of innovator entrepreneurship to the discussion, because we talk about AI as a very generic terms, but the narrative of AI is shifting rapidly in the industry, especially in Silicon Valley. Last year, lots of discussions about language model, chat, and this year is about the word model and agentic AI. And this evolution of the technology also bring new challenges and opportunity for discussion of a governance, of the transparency of the trustworthy AI. So I think this perspective, understanding where technology is heading to make sure the framework of the discussion for AI governance is not only for what we had already, but also prepare for the future, is very critical and important. And second thing we also wanted to contribute is really bring the perspective of not only just innovator, but also practitioner to the discussion. There are lots of the discussion about the risk profile of the model itself, but actually more risks present when we deploy AI. Compared with 2025, 2026 is the key word is the deployment of large-scale AI. Deploy AI into healthcare, financial, insurance industry, they're all highly regulated industry. So the risk profile for specific use cases are quite different, which also means we cannot use one size fit all. The regulation or governance cannot be identical for different industry, different region. How to really make sure we have a dynamic and a diversity of the discussion is very important. And also the third thing I think is really important is this global perspective. You know, as an investor, we have so many portfolio we'll be investing across AI. I was an AI entrepreneur before I become investor as well. And how to really building this global perspective for AI innovation, especially happening in Silicon Valley. We're very lucky based in Silicon Valley in this small town that most of AI innovation started. But on the other side, AI is a global topic. It's a global deployment, it's a global network. We wanted to bring this global perspective to founder as a board member, as an advisor, as an investor to ask them also think about it, not only just to solve the governance issue within Silicon Valley, within the United States, but also for different region, because product can reach different region in the future across different industry. The last piece I really want to highlight is when people heard about governance, they always think about regulation. But why couldn't we also think about create a framework to have more incentive for founder innovator to build responsible AI? If we make responsible AI not become a request or a regulatory requirement, but more a differentiation and competitive advantages for founder, there will be more incentive to help them not only build AI solution, but deploy trustworthy AI into the industry. I think that's another thing we can contribute and we want to contribute.
Thanks, Lou. Well said. Jason, to conclude, please.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you very much to the co-chairs and the Joint Secretariat for organizing this event and inviting all of us to be here. I think I have the pleasure of leading and privilege of leading a multi-stakeholder organization that brings academics, civil society organizations, investors, and tech companies together. And for 18 years have been working across those diverse stakeholders to prioritize focus on human rights, freedom of expression, and privacy in the tech space. And I think what we bring to the conversation is that history, that experience, a reminder that we are not starting from scratch, that there are organizations and institutions that have been working on digital governance, including ISO, OECD, many of the organizations with which I'm privileged to share this panel. We should remember that and build on those foundations rather than trying to create new institutions if they are, unless we have a specific need that needs to be filled that can't be addressed through existing efforts. Specifically, my organization, the Global Network Initiative, in partnership with the Center for Communications Governance at the National Law University in Delhi, launched an initiative earlier this year around the AI Impact Summit in India, called the Multi-Stakeholder Approaches to Participation in AI Governance, which is intended to ensure that civil society organizations from the global majority have not just a seat at the table in internet governance conversations, but really are in the kitchen, helping to set the menu, helping to prepare the meal, helping to serve the needs of the stakeholders that are often most excluded and overlooked when we convene in places like Geneva or New York. So our initiative brings resources and attempts to build bridges so that those perspectives can be fed into these processes. And we really look forward to working with all of the organizations involved here, with the UN, with the Swiss government, with their upcoming summit, to make sure that these conversations continue to focus on the needs of those who are being most acutely impacted by AI.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks to all of the panelists for sharing your contributions to the AI governance initiatives. Now I'd like to go a bit deeper, and I would like to switch around the orders as well. I would like to start with you, Dr. Baraka. Countries are increasingly moving from developing AI strategies to implementing governance approaches in practice. And earlier you spoke about shared AI infrastructure, AI sandbox, etc. So just wanted to see if you can share some of the practical lessons based on the Egypt experience on how do you translate AI governance ambitions into implementation, which elements have proven most important in balancing national priorities with international cooperation, and what lessons might be valuable for other countries that's embarking on a similar journey?
Well, thank you very much. I think Egypt experience, we suggest 4 practical lessons, each earned through trial and error, not really theoretical. The first one is sequencing matters more than speed. So Egypt did not leap from principles to regulation. We built a stack. We started with the national AI strategy, with institutional governance through the National Council for Artificial Intelligence, implementation capacity through the Egyptian Center for Responsible AI, and then a governance framework defining what is governed, operational guidelines defining how responsible AI applies across the life cycle, now extending into AI procurement guidance, so governance shapes real deployment decisions rather than sitting beside them. Our second lesson, I think, is our risk-based governance to be practical and scalable. Egypt's 4-tier model concentrates attention where stakes are highest. So rights, human rights, children, data protection, and public trust, rather than treating every system identically. For countries with limited regulatory capacity, this is what makes governance affordable, not just principled. Third lesson is about the implementation capacity and how it matters as much as the policy design. Frameworks do not implement themselves. They require trained people, testing and audit functions, and readiness assessment for both institutions and systems. Our Applied Innovation Center is definitely our implementation arm, so that he can actually implement these use cases in different priority sectors like health, agriculture, and education. The fourth lesson is about national identity and sovereignty. Our governance must serve national identity, not just national priorities. Karnak is Egypt's open-source Arabic language model, among the strongest in its class, shows that governance, innovation, linguistic inclusion, and digital sovereignty can be a single act, not 4 competing ones. A country does not have to choose between building its own technological voice and building its responsibility. So for countries starting this journey, the lesson is that AI governance is an ecosystem. It is not just a document. It is not just a strategy. It is not just institutions. It is about strategy, institutions, standards, procurement, and real deployment that must advance together. International cooperation, of course, earns its place by strengthening that ecosystem through shared tools, shared assets, shared lessons. But the proof is always local. a diagnosis that can be caught earlier, a language preserved in code, and a citizen who trusts the system making this decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Baraka, for sharing the experiences from implementing national AI strategy. Now over to you, Commissioner. Regional organizations occupy an important space between national and global governance. From the African Union's experience, and particularly with regards to your experience with the AU AI continental strategy, how can regional initiatives help countries learn from one another while reflecting shared priorities and local contexts? Where do you see opportunities for stronger complementarity between regional approaches and broader international AI governance efforts?
Thank you very much. Certainly, as African Union 2024, we unveiled our continental AI strategy. Really, the aim was to ensure that our 55 member states have a common guideline so that we don't have really 55 separate paths to AI adoption and regulation. Based on the domestication of that very strategy to date, we are talking about 16 countries that have, 16 African countries that have their own national AI strategies, showing that there is really strong appetite from the continent to not lose the opportunity and the window for becoming part of the AI trajectory and agenda. I think what is recognized now is that our real opportunity as a continent does not lie in us being individual markets, but really having a continent-wide AI ecosystem where we collaborate and where we enhance each other's capability at scale. And we have seen strong consensus really that our AI trajectory as a continent will be strengthened by anchoring and strengthening regional champions. Those champions being those countries that already have the foundational infrastructure, such as stable, affordable, reliable energy, to be able to have the actual technological infrastructure that can not only benefit the actual country, but the region at which, in which that country operates. For example, Southern Africa, we've seen South Africa being one of the anchors. We've seen Kenya vis-a-vis East Africa. We've seen Nigeria in the West, Egypt in North Africa, and certainly notable and important countries such as Rwanda and Uganda being leaders as well in terms of being regional anchors for AI adoption. I think some of our foundational infrastructure challenges, as I mentioned, like energy availability, etc., will have an impact on our ability to accelerate our adoption, and it's one of the key areas we are looking at quite strongly. And then there are 5 areas where we are saying that we need to prioritize if we are not going to be left behind as a continent. 1, we will strengthen and have to strengthen our infrastructure and compute capacity, particularly through, as I mentioned, shared regional models. Because as individual countries, 55 countries, it won't be possible for each country to have its own fully fledged solution. So we have to be regionally based. 2, it's about advancing sovereign capability. That means that we include local control, meaning African control over data, infrastructure, and model development. 3, we are focusing on closing the gaps in data and representation. This is particularly in relation to African languages and African contexts. I think it's a theme that came out very strongly yesterday as well in a number of the interventions. 4, it's about aligning our capital on the continent with long-term ecosystem development. And that really speaks to also placing emphasis on patient capital. I think if we're going to talk about adoption on the continent, we have to also look at or at least move away from the short-termism of the capital and investments that we are seeing on the continent. So we need patient capital and public interest investment. And 5th, it's really around improving coordination across the different sectors to translate our intent into execution. So it's about coordinating ourselves as policymakers with private sector, with civil society, to ensure that, as earlier mentioned, our AI adoption is also developmental, and we do indeed see a just AI transition for the African continent and the global south.
Thanks, Commissioner. Indeed, it's very important to talk about AI competitiveness, and we're very happy to work with AU on particularly the shared AI sovereign infrastructure as well. Next, I would like to go to Mr. Masaki. The OECD has helped shape international AI policy discussions for several years through principles. You've already talked about some of the policy analysis, international cooperation, including through the Global Partnership on AI. Looking across the wider AI governance landscape today, what lessons have emerged about what makes international cooperation effective? Where do you see growing convergence across different initiatives, and where is further dialogue still needed?
Thank you very much for your question. So in recent years, the international community has made significant progress in building the foundation for AI governance through shared principles, policy frameworks, and international dialogues. The challenge today is putting those principles into practice and ensuring AI is adopted in ways that benefit our economies and societies. AI adoption is accelerating, but it remains highly uneven across people, firms, sectors, and regions. Across the OECD in 2025, AI adoption reached 52% of large firms, compared with just 17% of small firms. Closing that gap requires investment in infrastructures, skills, and access to data, but it also requires trust, a powerful enabler of adoption. And building trust calls for practical mechanisms to reinforce transparency and accountability across the AI ecosystem. The revision of Hiroshima AI process reporting framework is one such mechanism, giving organizations a simple way to show how they are implementing trustworthy AI. To support governments more broadly, we recently launched the AI Policy Toolkit, which helps to identify barriers to AI adoption and translate common principles into practical, evidence-based policies that reflect national context. Later this year, we will complement it with the OECD AI Index, enabling countries to measure their progress in trustworthy AI policymaking. These tools were all developed through international cooperation, and they point to a clear lesson. Cooperation is most effective when it is grounded in evidence, open to all stakeholders, and flexible enough to respect national circumstances. In this respect, I'm encouraged to see growing convergence in three dimensions. First, there is growing recognition that AI is a high priority for governments. Countries may take different policies approaches, from horizontal frameworks to sector-specific rules to voluntary initiatives, but they have shared objectives: spreading the benefit of AI widely, addressing risks, and avoiding policy fragmentation. Second, there is broad understanding that since AI systems operate across borders, international cooperation and interoperability are essential. And because AI's impact reaches across economies and societies, no single discipline or community can respond alone. GPay and its broad expert networks serve as a bridge between technical expertise and policymaking, between research and implementations, and between regions with different capacities and priority. And third, as AI systems grow more powerful, supporting scientific discovery, generating realistic videos, finding security vulnerabilities, it matters more than ever the shared values and guardrails guide their development and deployment. Looking ahead, dialogue is still needed to anticipate emerging technology trends. Agentic and embodied AI are advancing at a remarkable speed, sometimes faster than policymakers, institutions, and even technical experts can follow. We need to build a shared understanding of these systems, their capabilities, and their risks because they are widely deployed. No country can do this alone. The global dialogue comes at a pivotal moment, and the OECD looks toward to contributing our evidence and expertise to support this effort. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Saki. Roberto, the European Union has moved beyond developing principles to implementing one of the world's most comprehensive AI governance frameworks, as you just alluded to. As more jurisdictions develop their own approaches, how can different regulatory and policy models remain interoperable while respecting different legal traditions and governance objectives? What lessons from the European experience and the Council of Europe might be relevant to the broader international conversation?
Thanks very much for the question. We have to acknowledge that the AI revolution is just at the beginning, not at the end. This is not the end of the history, it's the beginning of a new industrial revolution, and we still have to understand all the profound implications. What happened in the last few weeks where the most powerful models were actually subject to an unprecedented scrutiny shows that jurisdictions that before believed the private-led initiative should actually be the dominant factor are thinking now to introduce a more comprehensive framework. Jurisdictions that thought that just regulating or just, framing would be enough are now thinking that more should be done in terms of investments. So in a way, there's more convergence than it used to be. This is the good news. The difficult news is that problems are becoming even more difficult because it's clear that the intensity of capital needed to develop AI systems, the complexity of the change in the society, looking at the structure of our society, what it means for instance, the workforce, the complexity of regulating something which is not completely understood from the technical point of view, is something that really requires a shared effort. And so, answer to your question, yes, we invested a lot, also mindful of our responsibility into a comprehensive framework, but we never spared efforts to reach out internationally and to try to find a common narrative for AI. And again, I don't think the answer is still, completely clear. And we should be all humble and think that the only answer that works is a collective answer. More and more, there's the call for sovereignty. More and more, there's the call for, local solutions, which I think they reflect the ambition of each nation, each jurisdiction to develop a model that works. But at the same time, I think through standardization of approaches, through standards, through shared economic analysis, shared scientific knowledge, AI will advance and really unlock the benefits that it's promising. Many thanks.
Thanks, Roberto. Sergio, what role, you already talked about, the importance of standards. And if you can just elaborate a little bit further on what role can standards play in helping different AI governance initiatives work together more effectively, and how can standards contribute to greater interoperability and trust across diverse governance approaches without replacing the distinct roles of governments and other institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. That's a really important question. First of all, it helps me clarify that people tend to confuse standards with policy and with regulation. And they are quite different, actually, in nature. We do not do policy. That's the job of policymakers, many of them here in this room. We do not create regulation, but we do provide a bridge to implement those policies and regulations into the real work on the ground. So we really want to believe that we can help policymakers and regulators to achieve their own ambitions. Second thing to mention is that many times AI governance is addressed at the national level. However, there are a lot of, as many have said, there are a lot of cross-border implications, even in a shared value chain. So that means that there is also overlapping layers and many times fragmented and even contradictory layers at the national, regional, and global level, including sometimes some frameworks created by the private sector. So with all of that in mind, the question for ISO and also for all of us in this room, I guess, is how can we help? So number one, in the case of ISO, by creating this shared and common language that I referred to in the previous question, we can have divergent policy frameworks, but at the very least, we should have common understanding of the terminology and the words we use. What is it what we mean when we say risk-based approach? What is it what we mean when we say impact assessment, and so on? The second key way we can collaborate is by enabling interoperability, but for real. So we know that countries will have their own regulations, but if we have shared frameworks that can be applied everywhere, we can provide a real plug-and-play environment. And I can give you an example on incident reporting that's been discussed a lot during this week. I will not tell anyone to whom an incident should be reported. That is the job of regulators and policymakers in every specific country. But we can support by providing a framework about data governance, about what is the information that should be there, how to collect it, how to put it together. So the how. Policymakers define the what, we define, or we support defining the how. And last but not least, and this is really important, is consistency and verifiability. I mean that in each country, people and organizations make an effort to do things in certain manner that will create trust. However, we don't know what my neighbor is doing, and that can create an unfair competitive advantage. So consistency is of the essence. Also having a conformity assessment framework in place that can be trusted by everyone. I'm stealing words from my colleagues from the African Union here, in previous exchange with ARSO, the standard body for the African region. What we want here is one standard with one test, with one certificate recognized everywhere. This is what really creates interoperability, and we can do that through standards. My very final point is about implementation, because we standard makers live under the illusion that our job is done when a standard is published. The reality is that that is just the beginning, and the job is done when the standard is implemented, and not only that, when the standard has created a positive impact on the ground. And for that, we need to combine forces and create real partnerships. And this is what we have done in the ISO policy and standards AI journey, when we combine forces with Korea and the Netherlands and with many international organizations, and we created a place where policymakers and standard makers can work together. It's not only the outcome, it's the practice of working together. So we define what are the things that can be enabled. For example, in the case of Malaysia or Egypt, they created or they based the AI national strategy on this journey. So these are some of the key examples that can be implemented on the ground, so we address this common challenge. Thanks.
Thanks, Sergio. Anna Maria, implementation requires more than policies. It also requires investment institutions and capacity. I think many of your previous panelists have already alluded to that point. From the perspective of the IDB, what have you learned about supporting countries as they develop AI governance capabilities? And how can development institutions help ensure that emerging governance initiatives are inclusive and accessible to countries at different stages of digital development?
Thank you, Kathy. Let me ground my answer on what we see across Latin America and the Caribbean at the moment. Across our region, we see real movement. We have more than 1,000 pilots running in the public sector alone, and this is an underestimation because we don't know, this is what we estimated, but we are sure that this is an underestimation. We are seeing public services boosted with AI to be more effective and a real drive to learn and to build. In Brazil, for example, with the support of IDB, the state of Ceará modernized its courts with AI and lifted judicial productivity by 40%. Let me repeat, 40%. That's a sizable number. Although the region is still innovative, it lacks some of the foundations needed to scale AI responsibly. And this is important. It's not just institutions, but many other things as well. Our region still faces important digital gaps. Fixed broadband penetration is only about half that of the OECD countries. Just 7 out of the 26 countries or of our borrowing member countries score above 50% in the AI Readiness, Adoption, and Governance Index. But the region, we believe, offers immense opportunities. We have the cleanest energy matrix. We have the critical minerals that are important for deploying the AI revolution. A population of about 650 million people in predominantly middle and high middle income countries, economies with purchasing powers, and institutions that already have the base to absorb the technology. And I would add one opportunity that I believe is very important, which is the productivity gap that we have. The larger the gap with respect to the advanced economies, the higher the returns to closing that distance. And why am I mentioning this? Because we believe that the IDB group has worked together with the public and the private sector in Latin America and the Caribbean digital transformation path. So we already have experience through the digital transformation where institutions play an important role in here. So 2 important messages and examples that I would like to provide on governance. First, institutions, we believe, are the stepping stone to reap the benefits from adopting these new technologies. But the region, and this is something that I really would like to stress, does not start from scratch. The region does not need to reinvent the institutions that we already have. It needs really to evolve those institutions and to adapt to these new technologies. Data protection is something very specific and is a case in point. With already 17 countries in the region having data protection laws and 12 countries with dedicated authorities doing this. So what we can do is that can leverage all these existing foundations and adapt them to the demands of the AI Act, which is important. And second, for the region, technological sovereignty is not about doing everything alone. It's about coordinating, which is something that we have been discussing already in this panel. Of course, it's about retaining the capacity to govern the data, the infrastructure, and AI in the public interest through, and this is also something that I would like to stress, a combination of national capabilities and regional coordination and cooperation. So interoperability is going to be crucial and standards are going to be crucial. We believe that the IDB, as I already said, has the convening power, the financing instruments, and the knowledge networks that help us turn this vision into a shared regional agenda and accelerate its implementation. And let me close with a concrete example. The use of blended finance and public-private partnerships to help leveling the playing field. With blended finance, we can help countries share the risk, extend investment horizons for the patient capital that is already mentioned in this panel, and reinvest sector resources into connectivity and digital infrastructure, which is going to be crucial to accelerate the inclusion of the underserved population and low-income areas and ensure that the benefits of the AI and the digital transformation reach all citizens. So what we do is to work with the governments and the private sector to help them scale and coordinate these efforts across the region. Thank you.
Thanks, Ana Maria. Lu, many AI governance initiatives seek to promote innovation while managing risks, but translating that balance into practice remaining challenging. From your experience working with AI companies and at the frontiers of innovation, what characteristics make governance initiatives effective and credible from the perspectives of innovators?
Yeah, thank you, Cassie, for the questions. I think especially in the past couple of years, we always joke about used to be Silicon Valley is always like, okay, we'll focus on innovation. But the past couple of years, there's lots of discussion, including myself, go to Washington, D.C. quite a few times to really wanted to contribute to the discussion of the governance because exactly as you ask, we want to make sure it's not only just something on paper, but we actually can practice and deploy it and really help AI achieve a better result. We're doing the large deployment across different industry. I think number one thing really, really important is we want the governance to be technology informed. I think I heard other panelists already mention, I also mentioned early on, technology within AI innovation evolves so fast. We definitely don't want the discussion of governance. Once it's finalized, it's already outdated. On one side is the model evolution, etc. But on the other side, it's also about how industries utilize AI. For example, I think everyone is very familiar with large language model, right? We're using large language model for different industry adoption. But in reality, if you look at a lot of the industry, they're actually having a hybrid mode. For example, I also serve as a board member for the Common Spirit Health Foundation, which is one of the largest healthcare system, nonprofit healthcare system in the United States. They have thousands of the hospital and clinic. They're not only deploying large language model because they're a highly regulated industry. They also have lots of small language model they're deploying. They're also building something in-house. They're also work with third party. So essentially become a pretty hybrid dynamic AI strategy. And they need to have a governance layer on top of that, not only for one model or another. This is a system. So whether the governance discussion realize the complication of this technology evolution during the adoption is very important. The deployment part is really important. Another part about the technology informed is really about leverage technology itself as a solution for the discussion of the governance. For example, probably not many people heard about federated computing. But federated computing now become more and more popular for highly regulated industry like healthcare, like financial, because it actually help the data owner not to worry about compliance. They don't need to physical transfer or move their data, well, share that with third party for AI training. So this is one of the examples that technology can help us achieve better governance result. And the technology is available, it's mature, ready to go. But did we consider that when we discuss about governance and regulation? I think beyond the first thing about technology, second thing, I really like the point that Sergio mentioned early on is the regulation, the discussion of the governance regulation should not be technology-based, but the risk and also the challenge-based and also data-based. And really like his point about we need to have a clear definition. What is a risk-based, the risk-based regulation and the governance? And also on top of that, I feel is also really need to understand specific, across different industry, what is their risk profile and how to implement governance for specific industry. I think regarding that, there's a fine balance of on one side, yes, we need standardization across the globe. And we wanted to have good translation from one region to another region, one country to another country, understand the governance of AI. But also, I think we need to break into pieces. For example, for the evaluation part, yes, should be standardized. Transparency, very important. But for deployment, we need to make it practical. And come back to the definition of risk profile. Okay, what is a risk profile for different country, different industry? That's definitely different type of the definition. And also, the last point I really want to highlight again, I mentioned early on, is really just the incentive. When we heard about governance, people, especially the innovator and entrepreneur, the first reaction is, oh, it may potentially slow down the deployment of innovation, but that's not the goal. I think the shared purpose here is we wanted to empower AI to really benefit the society faster by discussion of the governance. So if we really can have the framework as a society from the government angle to create this incentive to help responsible AI deploy faster, that will be a really positive feedback loop for more founders to implement governance when they build a solution. And for the user, for the industry leader who deploy AI and choose AI vendor, they will go with the one already have responsible AI building in. I think that will be a really good dynamic and also ecosystem we can push forward while adapting to the fast evolving AI technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Lu. And last question goes to Jason. Many of the AI governance discussions center around multi-stakeholder collaboration, but achieving that itself is a challenge. From your experience, what practical models have proven effective in bringing together governments, industry, civil society, and the technical community? And how can the global AI dialogue build on these experiences to strengthen cooperation rather than creating additional fragmentation?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. It allows me to sort of make a point, or maybe double click on a point that I started to make in my first intervention, which is that we're not starting from scratch. We are, I think everybody here probably understands, but it's worth emphasizing that artificial intelligence models, in certainly most large language models, even some of the smaller language models, are built from data scraped from the internet, are deployed to users through the internet, and rely on the internet to interoperate more and more, especially as agentic AI becomes more integrated into different service offerings. So in other words, AI is built in large part on top of the social and technical architecture of the internet. And the internet has an architecture and governance that has been through 20 plus years of process development, discussion, and multi-stakeholder coordination. And that's an important reservoir of experience and knowledge that we can draw from as we think about governing AI. And there's three things, I think, that, if we try and sort of distill the key lessons from internet governance for those of us embarking on AI governance, that we need to emphasize. Effective governance will require inclusive process. It needs common normative frameworks, and it needs clear focus and priorities. So first, when it comes to inclusive process, we have today and this week the benefit of overlapping with the World Summit on the Information Society, which is a 20-year experiment in working across countries and across sectors to try and govern the information society. And there are many processes and lessons and spaces that have come out of that can be useful to AI governance, not least of which is the Internet Governance Forum and its regional governance forums and its national Internet Governance Forums. So I invite everyone here to put the 2026 Internet Governance Forum in Nairobi, Kenya on your calendar and to consider being a part of the conversations leading up to and at that forum. I think it's also important to recognize that internet governance hasn't only happened through UN processes. There have been many important innovations outside of the UN system that the UN system has allowed to flourish and has found ways to sort of interoperate with. The Net Mundial process that the Brazilian government and the Brazilian Internet Steering Committee has led produced a couple of years ago a set of recommendations for multi-stakeholder process called the São Paulo Principles. Mm-hmm. Those principles should should be the guidance through which we think about constructing all commissions, processes, initiatives around AI governance. So that's on process. We also need a common normative framework so that we are speaking a shared language in terms of trying to understand what we are seeking to achieve and what we want to avoid. International human rights law provides that framework. We should say that out loud. We should recognize that. We should build it into our processes. And that's not just the sort of core international conventions on civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights, but also frameworks like the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights and the OECD Guidelines on Multinational Enterprises, which translate human rights into responsibilities for the private sector and have been embedded through processes like the one that the Global Network Initiative has developed into internal corporate governance. So that's on normative framework. And then finally, we need clear focus. There is a lot happening in the AI space, and we do need to make sort of priorities. And I humbly suggest that we should look to the communities that are being most impacted and who face the highest risks for to help establish what our focus should be. So that requires what I talked about earlier, involving civil society organizations that can bring research and knowledge of the experiences of those communities including those outside of the global outside of the global north, to the table and center them as sort of key priorities for us to focus on. So those would be my 3 key lessons from internet governance, and I encourage all of you to take some time this week and attend the WSIS forum as well, where I'm sure there will be many more valuable lessons distilled and shared.
Thanks, Jason. And with that, I wanted to extend our sincere appreciation to all of our distinguished panelists for sharing their experiences, lessons learned, and perspectives on AI governance initiatives from across different sectors and regions. Today's exchange has demonstrated the richness of ongoing efforts around the world and reinforced the importance of dialogue, coordination, and mutual learning as we collectively navigate the opportunities and challenges presented by artificial intelligence. A recurring theme throughout the discussion has been that no single institution, sector, or stakeholder group can address these issues alone. Effective efforts on advancing safe and inclusive AI across the international system will need to draw on diverse expertise, mandates, and capabilities while ensuring a coherent and coordinated approach that supports member states and the broader international community. In that spirit, we will now turn to a special segment highlighting the work of the United Nations Interagency Working Group on Artificial Intelligence, following a request from the WSIS Plus 20 outcome document. We're now pleased to invite to the podium to briefly introduce and launch the UN AI Resource Hub, capacity building and fellowship activities. May I ask Thomas Lamanuskis, Deputy Secretary General of ITU, Assistant Director General Maria Gabriel, New UNESCO, and Robert Opp, Chief Digital Officer, UNDP. Please come to the stage.
Thank you very much indeed, Kathy Lee, and to our esteemed panelists for that session. We'll now move on, and this special segment, as Kathy mentioned, is highlighting the work of the United Nations Interagency Working Group on Artificial Intelligence, following a request from the WSIS Plus 20 outcome document. And this group, co-led by ITU and UNESCO, brings over 60 UN entities to support collective action on AI governance, capacity building, sustainable development, and international cooperation.
So thank you very much, Max. Thank you very much, previous panelists. Indeed, it's great to see the dialogue is ongoing in force on the second day, and we're already reaching, the last quarter, I guess. So I'm Thomas Lamanuskis. I'm Deputy Secretary General of ITU, and I'm really pleased to be here today with the UN family, together with the UNESCO Assistant Director General and Chief Digital Officer of UNDP. And I think this is definitely highlights a collaboration of us as UN. So Max already introduced what Interagency Working Group is, but also this Interagency Working Group in the WSIS outcome document in its resolution got a new task. Actually, so for those who want to be precise, in the paragraph 86 of the resolution, we got a new task to really map out AI capacity building initiatives, also including fellowships, and look for the gaps, as well as how we can leverage existing capabilities across the UN system, and report back to this exactly global dialogue on AI. And one of the first practical steps implementing this mandate is the enhanced UN AI Resource Hub. Indeed, this hub which was unveiled last December in General Assembly, was developed by UNDP together with ITU UNESCO. So thank you very much, UNDP colleagues. And it brings already now more than 1,000 AI initiatives reflecting contributions from 55 diverse UN entities, and it's really a comprehensive place for you to find what UN is doing across the AI spectrum. And latest iteration specifically includes the capacity building opportunities, fellowships, contact points. So this exactly is the place for the operationalized place for you to know how you can benefit from capacity building and fellowship opportunities at the United Nations. Enhancements of the Insight page, it means that you can explore trends across regions, sectors, and technologies there as well. So every entity contributed, and we really present to you this as a comprehensive UN-wide tool, which we believe is a right tool for the right moment as countries adopt AI strategies and as we strive to build regulatory institutional capacity. Indeed, this is a way, one-stop shop to benefit from the cross-UN expertise. So with that, allow to invite Maria Gabriel, ADG from UNESCO, to really share some key insights from this year's data. Please, Maria.
Thank you very much, Thomas, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you very much, dear Thomas, dear Robert, for the great partnership between ITU, UNESCO, and UNDP. I will stay focused on working group perspective and the importance of collaboration. The continued growth of the UN AI Resource Hub reflects the strength of the collaboration across the UN system, driven by the Interagency Working Group on AI. And building on this data set, the HAP now offers a unique evidence base for understanding how AI is evolving across the UN system. And this year's insights highlight several important trends. First, AI capacity building is already system-wide, but not yet systematized. 623 initiatives across 66 UN entities span every region and a wide range of sectors. Second, stronger collaboration can amplify impact. Only 87 initiatives involve more than one UN entity, highlighting opportunities to better connect and scale efforts. Third, global expertise is reaching countries. The mapping includes 2,468 country mentions across more than 190 countries and territories, creating a strong foundation for local implementation. Next, governments lead, but broader partnerships matter. Public institutions are the primary beneficiaries with 581 mentions, with scope to engage civil society, academia, the private sector, and communities more consistently. And finally, knowledge is strong. Skills and impact need scaling. 508 AI tools and 498 research products dominate the portfolio, while training and outcome reporting remain comparatively limited with 152. But we see a trend of more trainings, fellowships emerging compared to last year's report. Up to you, Robert.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks, Thomas. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's been UNDP's pleasure to be part of this joint effort with UNESCO and ITU. And picking up where Maria left off on the issue of capacity building, one of the clearest signals that we are getting from this year's data is the growing emphasis on AI capacity building across the UN system. It's not surprising. Around the world, countries are moving quickly, of course, to develop AI strategies, strengthen institutions, and build regulatory capacity, applying AI responsibly. So in line with the WSIS Plus 20 outcome document, we're placing a particular emphasis on a particular focus on capacity building initiatives for member states. It includes AI fellowship programs, trainings, workshops, technical assistance, peer learning, and practical tools that help countries move from principles and strategies to implementation. To make these opportunities more easy to find, the Hub now features a dedicated page on AI capacity building offers and fellowships. It provides a consolidated entry point for member states and UN colleagues to see what support is available across the system. The purpose of the UN AI Resource Hub is simple. It's to make the system's knowledge more accessible, to avoid duplication and support member states, to identify the right support for the AI governance and capacity building needs. It's also a way to strengthen the collective offer of the UN system, not as separate initiatives, but as more connected ecosystems of support. As AI continues to evolve rapidly, this kind of coordination is essential. Countries need the support that is timely, practical, rights-based, and development-oriented. They also need support that reflects their different starting points, capacities, priorities, and contexts. The hub can help us respond with greater clarity and impact by connecting demand with expertise across the system. Looking ahead, our call to action is clear. We invite UN entities from across the system to continue contributing to the hub, and we've already got over 1,000 examples of this, as Thomas mentioned, especially by sharing capacity building offers, fellowship opportunities, training programs, and practical resources. We look forward to continued engagement from all entities to keep the platform relevant, useful, and truly system-wide. If we use it well, the UN AI Resource Hub can help turn our collective knowledge into coordinated action and ensure that AI serves people, development, and public good.
Thank you very much, everyone. So hopefully use the hub and have a great further of the dialogue. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much indeed, Thomas Lamanauskas, Deputy Secretary General of ITU, Maria Gabriel, Assistant Director General of UNESCO, and Robert Opp, Chief Digital Officer of UNDP.